Welcome everyone to our Save Plan workshop today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a lot of information to cover today, so we are going to jump right into things. And again, today is all about the Save Plan. So before we get into things, I'll quickly explain who we are. So we are the Student Debt Crisis Center. We are a national advocacy organization with 2 million supporters nationwide, and we are calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and an end to the student debt crisis. We also want to give a thank you to our funders. This programming was funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and we thank them for their support. However, the information presented in this workshop are those of SDCC alone, and they do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the foundation. All right, so we'll start with some quick reminders here for folks. We encourage you to use the Q&A function to ask your questions. We are short-staffed tonight, so we ask you to please not ask anything that is too personal or lengthy in the Q&A. We are going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible, but again, we are short-staffed tonight, so please be patient with our team. Any information shared on today's clinic pertains to the current guidelines and rules. This information is subject to change and it's been updated as of today, February 11th, and a recording will be provided via email to anyone who attended the webinar. All right, so what are we going to cover today? Today we'll be talking about what is happening with SAVE, what is happening with the SAVE plan and PSLF specifically, or public service loan forgiveness. What are my repayment plan options? I'm behind on payments. What can I do? And what are my loan forgiveness options? We're going to talk about some of those things today. And as a disclaimer, we are not financial counselors or attorneys. We are advocates and experts that are here to help. All right, so let's jump right in with some federal updates. So, some important things for folks to keep in mind. We'll start off here with default. So, the Department of Education has temporarily paused involuntary collections on defaulted student loan debt. That is including wage garnishments and tax refund seizures, anything considered Treasury offset. This change happened right as the Department of Education was sending 30-day wage garnishment notices to folks who are in default, letting them know that the collections would start up. But right now, there is this temporary pause. We don't have any sense on what the timeline is there or when that will resume. About 5 million folks have defaulted on their student loans, and about 4 million more are projected to default in the coming months. Now, if you're looking for information on PSLF or Public Service Loan Forgiveness, there have been rule changes to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness program. Those rules have been finalized, but they are currently being challenged in court through multiple lawsuits. So this could delay or stop the implementation scheduled to begin on July 1st, 2026. And it's also important to note that there are delays at the Department of Education. We saw reductions in force at the department that has been affected the implementation of programs, application processing, through significant backlogs and loan discharges. We are also seeing those trends as well. So if you are one of the folks who has submitted an application and you've been waiting for a while, that could be why. Some other things to keep in mind are that there are major changes coming in July 2026, and these are as a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was signed into law in July of 2025. These changes discussed today were included in the OBBA, but they'll still need to be finalized through a negotiated rulemaking process. So recently, on the 30th of January, the final rule that has been proposed was released and a public comment period began. So right now, the public can go ahead and comment on whether they support or oppose these changes. And this public comment period is going to end on March 2nd. We anticipate the final rule to be available around early May, and we expect it to be implemented in early July. Some of these changes include new lending limits, a new repayment plan, the phasing out of existing repayment plans for folks like the income contingent repayment and the pay-as-you-earn plans. There are only going to be two repayment plan options for new borrowers and many other changes that could be detrimental or affect your monthly payment amounts and make it increase. So just some things to put on your radar and to keep in mind that there are some big changes coming this summer. All right, now let's get into SAVE. So let's do a quick recap of what is SAVE and what's happening. So, SAVE or Saving on a Valuable Education is an income-driven repayment plan that was created in 2023 by the Biden administration. Anyone who was previously enrolled in the repay plan was switched over into SAVE. They were placed into that plan, and the repay plan has since been phased out. There are nearly 8 million Americans enrolled in the SAVE plan. So, what is happening to SAVE? This was something that was big in the headlines. So the Department of Education announced that the SAVE plan will end in the coming weeks pending court approval. So the Department of Education and states that were suing the SAVE rule, they basically came together with this joint settlement. It's now pending approval by a judge. Once it's determined to be okay, it will then end this plan. So here's what we know versus here's what remains unclear. So what do we know? SAVE is going away. Nearly 8 million folks who are currently enrolled in SAVE are currently in a forbearance, meaning no payments are required. We also know that interest began accruing for SAVE folks on August 1st, 2025, and no one can enroll in SAVE at this point. So those are the things that we are aware of. And there are many more things that remain unclear to us, including the timeline of all of this. When is this going to happen? When is the court going to give an answer? We don't know any of that at this point in time. The transition process, we're also getting folks asking, is this going to be automatic? Do I have to apply to something? We also don't have an answer to that, unfortunately. We're hoping that the department will provide us some sort of guidance that we can then relay on to you folks and provide more clarity there, but that is just where we find ourselves in this moment. What plan could folks be placed into? Again, another uncertainty, whether you're automatically placed into a plan like IBR or if you have to opt into something. And how long will processing take for millions of applications? As I mentioned, there's nearly 8 million folks who are currently enrolled in SAVE. At some point, folks are going to be notified that they need to change plans. Right now, there's nearly 700,000 income-driven repayment applications that are pending or outstanding at the Department of Education. If we add an additional 8 million, it could take up to 2 years, is what folks are estimating. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, but we are following along very closely and will provide information once we have it. All right, another question that we're seeing a lot is, wasn't SAVE supposed to go away by July 1st, 2028? Some folks were hoping to stay in the SAVE plan a little bit longer. But what actually was happening was that the SAVE plan was under attack legally, both in court and legislatively. So one way or another, SAVE is going to come to an end, but it just so happened that the court route um, is happening a lot sooner than the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So the OBBA stated that SAVE, along with the income contingent repayment and the pay plans, would be phased out by July 1st, 2028 at the latest. However, these lawsuits are impacting the future of the plan now. So for a lot of folks, that is a shock. This was definitely surprising to us at the beginning of the year. But we are hoping to get this information out to folks to know what their next steps could look like. All right, so something for folks to really keep in mind right now is to please be careful with misinformation. We're seeing folks trying to call their servicer, figure out what they need to do to get out of SAVE. Some servicers are telling people that they need to consolidate their loans in order to get out of the SAVE plan. That is incorrect. If you are in the SAFE plan, it means that you have direct loans. And if you want to access another repayment plan like income-based repayment or income contingent repayment, you just need to have a direct loan. You don't need to consolidate the loan further. So please be careful with that because right now, consolidation will reset your payment history back to square one, back at zero. So please be very careful. Now, in terms of what you can do right now, we encourage you to find out which repayment plan options you qualify for. We're going to get to that today and talk through what the different options look like. Use tools such as the loan simulator or the EdCap tool to estimate what your monthly payments could look like on these other plans. We'll also be covering that tonight. Whether or not you stay and save while it still exists is entirely up to you. If you want to stay and save and you benefit from not having to make a monthly payment right now, that's absolutely okay. If you are someone who's currently working towards public service loan forgiveness or you're close to reaching income-driven repayment forgiveness, you may want to consider switching to another IDR plan sooner rather than later so that you can continue accumulating those and making those monthly payments. If also you're someone who's concerned about a huge backlog and not getting placed into the plan that you want right now, you may want to consider applying now versus waiting down the line when 8 million other people are having to switch their repayment plan. So again, it is a personal choice, but these are just some options that are available to you. All right, so with that, I'm going to toss it over to Sabrina Ashley to cover the updated dashboard. Sabrina?
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Let's get into studentaid.gov. So this is where you will come to find your student loans, find out who your servicer is if you don't know that, and then also to look at all of your loan information. So you will want to head to www.studentaid.gov. Please type that directly into your browser or make sure that you have the um, direct link bookmarked because unfortunately there are scams out there. So if you just do a simple Google search, you might end up on a harmful website. So just keep that in mind. If you do have trouble logging into studentaid.gov or maybe resetting your password, you can call this number here, 1-800-433-3243, or you can head to studentaid.gov/fsa-id/help/recover-account. Either of those options will take you to a um, place where they can help you get back into your account. So let's get into what studentaid.gov looks like. In order to find your loan information now, it's just right on your dashboard, like your home screen. So it previously was called My Aid. If you haven't been to studentaid.gov in a while, if you log on now, it will now be called My Loans. So you just scroll down a little bit and you hit this My Loans button here. You can already see there's a bit of a difference on this screen. It tells you directly here your total balance, your interest rates, and then also your repayment plan and your recertification date. So it just gives you that information right up front. Once you hit View My Loans, it will take you to a screen where you can dive into every single one of your loans and you can figure out your repayment progress as well. So keep in mind that that is updated and definitely log in if you haven't logged in a couple of months. Okay, so student loan repayment options. We've broken them down here into this chart. So we have the standard plan. It's also called the level plan. We also have alternative plans like the graduated repayment plan, extended repayment, and extended graduated repayment. The standard and alternative plans are all plans where you pay the entire balance. So there's no forgiveness portion at the end of that timeline. And then, of course, we have the income-driven repayment plans like ICR or income contingent repayment. We have IBR, income-based repayment. We have pay or pay as you earn. Then, of course, the save plan, saving on a valuable education, which is highlighted in red because you can no longer apply or enroll in the save plan. And then we have RAP, which is repayment assistance plan. And a note about RAP is it's not going to be available until July 1st, 2026. And then one note about the pay plan is that not everyone is eligible for pay. So if that doesn't show up on your account, um, it might be under your ineligible plans. So the standard plan, we have two different versions of the standard plan. There's the 10-year standard plan, and this is a plan where everyone is placed into if you don't take action and actually apply for a different plan. This is a 10-year plan with fixed monthly payments. Again, at the end of the line here, you will have paid the entire loan balance. Um, it is available to folks with unconsolidated loans. If you do have consolidated loans with a balance less than 7,500, then you will be placed in the 10-year standard plan as well. There are more affordable options for borrowers who might be struggling, but this is a good plan if you want to make a bigger dent in your debt, if you're maybe worried about interest capitalizing, or if you just want to try to get out of the system more quickly, then you might want to consider the 10-year standard plan. Um, on this next slide, we have the 30-year standard plan, or I guess 10 to 30 years. This is where loans that are consolidated end up. And you can see the breakdown here for the repayment period is just based off of your loan amount. So that's why the repayment timelines differ here. Again, the monthly payments are calculated so that you will pay off the whole loan in the repayment period. Um, and again, there is no loan forgiveness aspect to this plan. Okay, so the fixed alternative plans, these plans you do have to apply for. We have extended, graduated, and extended graduated repayment. These are all essentially variations of the standard plan. Going to the extended plan first, all loans are going to be eligible for this plan except for Perkins loans. But if you do have Perkins loans, you can just consolidate those into a direct consolidation loan, and then that will become eligible. The payments are fixed in this plan, and the repayment timeline is 25 years, and it's only available to folks with balances that are higher than $30,000. For the graduated plan, again, the loan eligibility criteria is the same. The repayment timeline is going to differ depending on your loan type. FFEL and direct consolidation loans are going to have a 10 to 30 year timeline that's based off of your loan balance. And then all other loans are going to have a 10-year repayment timeline. And the payments here are going to start lower and then increase every 2 years. And then we have the extended graduated plan, and this is a combination of the previous two plans. Again, the loan eligibility criteria is the same. The repayment timeline here is going to be 25 years. The payments are going to start low and increase every 2 years. And then only folks with balances higher than 30,000 are eligible for this plan. And then a final reminder that you will pay off the full balance of your loans. There's no loan forgiveness aspect to those plans. And we're going to go over income-driven repayment next. Let's find our spot here. Awesome. Okay, so on this next slide, we have a breakdown of the benefits of IDR plans. These are going to be the monthly payments here are going to be calculated differently than the previous plan. So these are calculated as a percentage of your discretionary income. It's based on your income and family size and not your loan amount. And that's what makes these payments generally more affordable than the other plans that we've talked about. And because they're more affordable, that's what helps prevent default and delinquency or falling behind on your payments. These plans are specifically more helpful for folks with lower incomes, those who are unemployed, those with decreased incomes. You can recertify your income at any time to secure a lower monthly payment amount for the next year. So if you ever find yourself in a situation with a decreased income, or maybe you became unemployed and you have a $0 income, you can recertify at that lower income and then lock in a monthly payment that's lower for the next year. And that is very helpful to many folks. On an IDR plan, you do need to recertify your income every year. We recommend doing this every 11 months to stay ahead of that deadline. You can do this online or via paper form, and basically, you're just providing them updated income and family size information so that your servicer can determine a new monthly payment amount for you. There's a loan forgiveness portion to IDR plans. And this happens after you have made 240 credits or 340 credits or payments. Credits and payments are kind of interchangeable there. It depends on your IDR plan. It could have a forgiveness timeline of 20 or 25 years. And then an important note here is that your credits and repayment history do transfer over when you switch from one IDR plan to another. So I know that this is a save plan workshop. Folks might be considering switching out of the save plan and into another. Like Sabrina said earlier, you do not need to consolidate during that process. And additionally, your credits will transfer with you to your next repayment plan. Okay, a little bit about taxes and IDRs. Tax filing statuses. If you're married and filed jointly, this is where both incomes are taken into consideration. However, if you're now separated or divorced, or you can't reasonably access your spouse's current income, the Department of Education will not factor in your spouse's income or loan debt when calculating your IDR payment. If you are married and you file separately, um, the spousal income is not considered in that situation. So that's the breakdown there. And then beginning on January 1st of this year, 2026, any IDR student loan forgiveness will be taxed as income. However, if you receive or if you reached the forgiveness threshold back in 2025 and you only are receiving the actual forgiveness now, then it will not be taxed. So if you reached the threshold back in 2025, you will be exempt from that being taxed as income. But if you reach the threshold January 1st or later, then you will be have that taxed as income. And then a note about IRS integration that has resumed on IDR applications. If you provide consent, the Department of Education can pull your income information on the online IDR application from your last year's tax filing. However, if you do opt into this, you still have to manually recertify your income every 11 months. Okay, a quick sort of disclaimer here for IDR versus IBR. These two terms get mixed up a lot. So we just want to clarify that income-driven repayment, or IDR, is the umbrella term here. So that is the category and the name of the overall program. IBR, income-based repayment, also ICR, pay, and save are all types of IDR plans. So it can get very confusing, but that is the difference there. Okay, here is a breakdown of what the different plans look like. So I mentioned earlier that your monthly payments on IDR plans are based off of a percentage of your discretionary income, and they all have different repayment timelines. So you can see this breakdown here. Pay and the new IBR both have 10% discretionary income threshold and then 20-year timelines for repayment, whereas IBR has 15% discretionary income and 25 years and ICR has 20% discretionary income and 25 years for repayment. A note here about IBR, income-based repayment, is that because of the big bill that passed back in July of 2025, borrowers can now apply for IBR even if they don't have that partial financial hardship factor, but you may need to wait a while for your application to be processed. As we said, there are a lot of backlogs right now. Okay, so the repayment assistance plan, I mentioned this briefly earlier. RAP is slated to begin on July 1st of 2026. The repayment term here is going to be 30 years or 360 of those credits or payments. We do have a breakdown here of what the income range, the percent of income used to calculate the monthly bill, and the monthly bill range looks like here. So you can kind of see how you stack up there. Who qualifies for RAP? This is going to be available to all borrowers with direct loans, but not available to Parent Plus loans. So if you have Parent Plus loans, you are not going to be eligible for RAP. Things to know about this repayment plan is that $0 payments will no longer exist. There's going to be a minimum of a $10 monthly payment, even if you're unemployed. The RAP plan will waive any interest not covered by the borrower's monthly payment and will reduce borrower's principal by up to $50 if the payment does not do so. And based on these payments are going to be based off of 1 to 10% of your adjusted gross income. So this is less generous than the SAVE plan, and it's more expensive than other IDR plans for lower income folks. And again, we have that screenshot up there, and you will get a recording of this so you can look at that again. So changes to IDR plans. OBBBA outlined that the following IDR plans are set to phase out by July 1st, 2028, and this could be happening sooner. And this is going to impact income contingent repayment or ICR and pay as you earn or pay. So borrowers, you should definitely explore your repayment options to prepare for that change. If you are enrolled in pay or ICR, and you don't choose another repayment plan by the time those plans are eliminated, you're going to be placed in different plans, and we'll go through that right here. So direct loans will be placed in the RAP plan, and then FEL loans and any direct consolidation loans that repaid a Parent Plus loan will be placed in the income-based repayment plan. It's very confusing. Again, you're going to get a recording of this so you can come back to this slide. Um, but this is what will happen if you are in pay and ICR and you don't choose another repayment plan by the time that they are phased out. Okay, so how to apply for another IDR plan? You can apply for an IDR plan online. This is also where you can apply via paper. You just have to go online to find the paper application. If you applied before March 2025, and you submitted an application requesting the lowest monthly payment option or applied for the SAVE plan, and your application is still pending, you should consider resubmitting your application. Again, there are tons of backlog, so if you still have a pending application from before March 2025, you may want to consider resubmitting your application. To apply, you'll need your permanent or your mailing address, your family size, and then if you don't choose that IRS integration feature, you will need to provide some type of income documentation, whether that's like a W-2, a pay stub, maybe a bank account statement, and you must know what plan you want to enroll in. Again, the lowest monthly payment option is not available anymore on the IDR application. For processing, it can take a few days to a few months to process your application. Applications that do opt into the IRS integration are being processed more quickly compared to manually documenting income. That is what we've seen. And then you should be placed into a processing forbearance once you submit your application. If you're not, you can call your servicer and demand to be placed into one. A processing forbearance is a 60-day, up to 60-day forbearance where you do not have to make payments. If your application is not processed in that 60 days, you will just be placed into a different type of forbearance and you will still not have to make payments until your application is processed. Okay, how to estimate monthly payments on IDR plans. I'm going to toss it back over to Sabrina.
Thanks, Sabrina Ashley. All right, I did see a couple questions in the Q&A about the loan simulator and figuring out monthly payments, so let's jump into this section. So, how do you identify monthly payments on different plans? There's a few options available to you, and we'll show some screenshots as well, so just keep that in mind. So the first thing is the loan simulator. This is something that can be found at studentaid.gov. The downside of the loan simulator is that it's not 100% accurate. It tends to be accurate for the standard plan in terms of the amount that you would pay, but the numbers can vary when it comes to what the amount will be. It is a good tool if you don't have time to call your servicer and wait on the phone. If you do have a little bit more time, I do recommend calling your servicer if you need a little bit more guidance or hand-holding. That could be a good option for you. They can definitely share with you which plans you're eligible for and the estimated monthly payments that you would be making on those plans. The downside is that there often are long wait times. So if you are planning to call your servicer, I would ask them, what repayment plans am I eligible for and what are the estimated monthly payments? And specifically, if you're working towards the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, I would tell them that so that they can share with you the plans that qualify for Public Service Loan Forgiveness so that you're taking care of that as well. And then there's this other tool that we call the EdCap tool that also provides the monthly estimates. Now, the difference with the EdCap tool is that it will tell you the amounts. However, it won't tell you which plans you actually qualify for. So there are pros and cons to all of them. So I do recommend playing around a bit and getting a sense of what that could look like. All right, so if you want to access the loan simulator, again, log into studentaid.gov. Right at that top toolbar, hover over loan repayment, and then click on loan simulator in the tools and calculators section. Once you click on that, you will come to this page, and we recommend that you go with the first column, which is I want to find the best student loan repayment strategy. You would then click on that. And once you do so, this is what you'll see. On the left-hand side will be the first thing. You will then click all that apply to you. So, do you have a job or plan to get one soon? If you filed taxes in the last 2 years, if you're married or will be, if you have children or dependents, you'll answer all of that. If none of that applies to you, just select the none of these apply to me option. And then, whatever you do indicate, they will then ask you for a little bit more information. So, in this person's case, they selected that they filed taxes. So, they're going to ask the tax filing status. They'll ask what the yearly salary is, all of that information. You go ahead and fill that out and proceed on with the tool. And then it will then take you to this page and say, confirm your current loan situation. Your loans should automatically pre-populate in this section. You would then just make sure that everything looks right, everything is appearing, and then you can go ahead and get to the next page. It will ask you if your spouse has loans. If they do, you would need to enter that information here. And then if you are working towards public service loan forgiveness, you can select the repayment options that maintain eligibility for that program. If you're not, you can go ahead and select no. And then I think one of the most important questions is what is your primary repayment goal? Our recommendation is to select the have a low monthly payment option so that when you get the results of the tool, it will show you the lowest monthly payment. So in this case, the person went through, their recommended repayment plan was the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, or ICR, and they were working towards public service loan forgiveness. So this person has an estimated monthly payment of $339 a month. The payment period for the ICR plan is up to 25 years. I think it's important to note that when you're going through this, it's not telling you that you have an additional 25 years of payments to make. As Sabrina Ashley said earlier, when you switch from one income-driven repayment plan to another, the history and the payments transfer over. So if you've been in repayment for 10 years, you would have 15 more years to go until you reach the 25-year mark. You're not starting over from scratch. So again, in this case, the person got ICR. But if you want to see all of the plans that you qualify for and what the monthly payment looks like, I do recommend that you scroll down a little to that blue button that says View and Compare All Plans. Once you go ahead and select that option, it should then populate with all of the plans that you qualify for. So in this case, ICR, and then they show all of the other ones. So this person is also eligible for the graduated, the extended, and the standard plans. Now, if we look here on the right-hand side, it's worth noting that there's also ineligible plans. If you scrolled a little bit further down, it will say view ineligible plans. This person specifically didn't qualify for pay as you earn. Again, a reminder that pay as you earn has a partial hardship requirement, so not everyone qualifies for that plan. And in this case, the IBR plan said that it didn't qualify. However, it's worth noting that there is a disclaimer that they are currently working on the loan simulator, so that could also be inaccurate. All folks should be able to access the IBR plan at this time. So if that's incorrect, I recommend playing around with the EdCap tool or even calling your servicer because IBR could be an option for you. And then this is a glimpse as to what the EdCap tool looks like. Again, it cannot confirm which plans you qualify for, but it does a pretty good job of providing the estimated monthly payments. So you'll input your balance information, the estimated annual interest rate that you pay across the board, your adjusted gross income, the household size, number of dependents, and borrower type for IBR. That's to figure out which version of the IBR plan you would qualify for. And then once you input all of that information, we'll come to the next slide here and it then breaks down that further. So it'll have IBR, the percentage of your income, the forgiveness timeline, as well as some additional notes here for you. So this could also be a very helpful tool for folks, especially if you're having trouble logging into student.gov and you can't access the loan simulator. This might be something worth trying. And another benefit of the EdCap tool is that if you're considering the WRAP plan in the future, it does give you an estimated monthly payment amount for WRAP. So if you're just thinking about that, this is a good tool to start playing around with for a bit. All right, now let's get to what to do if you are struggling to repay your loans. All right, so we recommend that folks check your eligibility for income-driven repayment plans as the first step before opting into anything else. We always recommend that. Maybe you can lock in a $0 monthly payment or a lower monthly payment. However, that's not possible for everyone, right? Sometimes that's just not a possibility and you can't afford the minimum monthly payment on an income-driven repayment plan. In a case like that, there are temporary emergency options. There are forbearances and deferments that folks can consider. Now, forbearances allow you to temporarily stop making monthly payments or make smaller payments. Usually, there's no progress towards forgiveness or loan payoff during a forbearance, and interest does accrue. Some folks choose to pay the interest during a forbearance, but if you are struggling, you do not have to do that. Now, there's also deferments that allow you to temporarily stop making payments, and the interest does accrue, but on some loan types, not all of them. And there are specific eligibility requirements and forms tied to deferments. So, specific instances where if someone is undergoing cancer treatment or a graduate fellowship or rehabilitation training, those are specific situations in which you can apply for a deferment. So, if these are options that are appealing to you, if this is something you want to take advantage of, you can go to studentaid.gov to learn more about forbearances and deferments as well as to apply. All right, now something else to keep in mind. So, what happens if I don't make payments? The first day past due, your payment is considered delinquent, and the loan will remain delinquent until the missed payments are made up. Or you can also request that a deferment or forbearance is granted for the delinquent period. So you can call your servicer and request that they retroactively apply a forbearance or a deferment to take care of all of this delinquent period and bring your loan back into good standing. Now, if your loan continues in delinquency for more than 90 days, the delinquency is going to be reported on your credit. So it'll be reported to the major credit bureaus, and then you'll see a drop in your credit score. For some folks, it could be hundreds of points. So we know how damaging that can be. Um, and we know that after 270 days past due, which is an estimated 9 months, the student loan is officially in default. There are consequences of default that include tax refunds being withheld, wage garnishment of up to 15%, ineligibility for federal assistance. The good news is that this has been temporarily paused, as I mentioned at the top of the hour. So those consequences should not be happening right now. It should be paused. Um, and Another good news is that there are options to get your loans out of default. There's loan rehabilitation or loan consolidation. So if your loans are in default, we're going to cover in just a second how to get them out. And it's also worth noting that federal Perkins loans can be placed into default after just 1 day of missed payments. Now, how to know if you are in default? If you're unsure, the easiest way to find out is by logging into studentaid.gov, and there would be a red banner at the top, as you see here, and it will say you have X number of loans in default. So if you have 5 loans and they're all in default, it will then say you have 5 loans in default. That's typically the easiest place to go to find that information, but I believe we have a few slides here that will provide some additional information too. So, some options to get out of default loan rehabilitation, as I just mentioned. This is where you would make 9 on-time monthly payments over the course of 10 months. You would work with your servicer to determine an affordable monthly payment amount. Once this is done, the collections would stop, and this is a one-time opportunity. The other option is loan consolidation. So, this is the process of converting or combining your loans into a direct consolidation loan, which is essentially creating a new loan. Through this process, you would need to either agree to repay under an income-driven repayment plan or make 3 full on-time payments before consolidating. And if you only have one loan and it's already been consolidated into a direct consolidation loan, then loan consolidation is not an option that you can take advantage of. A few tips as well for folks who are in default. If the Department of Education or the default resolution group emails you or tries to contact you, do not ignore the email or the communications. Because if you act within the first 60 days of entering default, you can prevent the collections from starting. It's a lot easier to stop it from happening than to stop it halfway through. So that is just one recommendation that we have. If you are in default, I also recommend exploring available loan forgiveness opportunities. So, if total and permanent disability discharge or closed school discharge and some other programs are options that you qualify for, we highly recommend submitting an application and applying for those programs as well. Now, to receive assistance or to learn more about your options, you can call the default resolution group. If you can't find the loans or you don't know how to take the next step to get the loan out of default, they may be a good resource for you as well. And then also there is a tool called Dial Before You File, and we recommend using it if your loans are in default and you are at risk of having your tax refund seized. Now, I mentioned that the tax refund seizures have been paused. However, we don't know how long this pause will last. And so, again, highly recommend that you use this Dial Before You File tool. We will be sure to include all of these links in the follow-up email that goes out tomorrow to everyone who's attending tonight's workshop. All right. With that, I'm going to toss it back to Sabrina Ashley.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, let's get into a little bit about public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF, as I will refer to it from now on. So, this program is a loan forgiveness program that was started in October of 2007. And the reason why we point that out is that any work done that may have qualified before 2007 um, is actually not eligible for this program since it did not exist. So, um, unfortunate there, although thank you all for any hard work that you did prior to this program being created. This program is 120 payments, so this is 10 years or more while working at an eligible employer. And those payments must be made as well as any payments that are made during the time for your application approval. So the payments here are cumulative and not consecutive. So essentially, if you enroll in PSLF, you have to make 120 payments. Um, And once you reach that payment threshold, you will submit your final PSLF help tool application, which we'll go over shortly. And then they will process your application for approval. And during that approval time, you still need to be making payments. I've seen a couple of folks mention that in the chat. So make sure that if you're reaching that 120 payment threshold, that you are waiting until you see that forgiveness hit your account before you stop making payments. And we have this little formula here at the bottom. We have income-driven repayment plus public service loan forgiveness equals your maximum benefit. As I mentioned earlier, we have the standard plan. It's a 10-year standard plan. Technically, that does qualify for PSLF. However, you would be paying your whole loan balance if you were in the standard plan, so there wouldn't be any forgiveness at the end of that timeline. So if you do want the maximum benefit, you would want to enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, which would qualify you for PSLF, and then you would get some loan forgiveness at the end of those 120 payments. So, a little checklist for qualifying for PSLF. You'll want to ask yourself, do you have a direct loan? Does your employer qualify? Are you in a qualifying repayment plan? And you'll want to document your employer using the PSLF form or the PSLF help tool. And you can find that on studentaid.gov. Once you reach the 120 credits, you'll go through the PSLF help tool one last time. You'll click the button that says, I've completed 120 credits, and then you'll submit that and it will be sent for approval. So, what qualifies for PSLF? In terms of loans, any of these direct loans, direct subsidized, unsubsidized, grad plus, parent plus, or direct consolidation loans. So, if you do have a loan type that's not listed here, that is a cue for you to consolidate your loans into a direct consolidation loan. Um, as we mentioned earlier, consolidating your loans is a big decision. It can reset your IDR count. So just keep that in mind as you are looking at PSLF and whether you qualify or have a career that you are going to spend those 120 payments in. For repayment plans, as I mentioned, the 10-year standard plan does qualify for PSLF, as well as the income contingent repayment, pay as you earn, and income-based repayment plans. If you have been in the Save Forbearance and have been making payments, those payments do not qualify for PSLF or IDR. So the Save Forbearance does not qualify for PSLF. In terms of employers, all levels of government are going to qualify for PSLF, 501(c)(3) nonprofits, and then other critical public service jobs as well. In terms of what does not qualify for PSLF, we have FELP loans, Perkins loans, private loans, and any time spent in default. A note about FELP and Perkins loans, these are those loans that you can consolidate into a direct consolidation loan to become eligible for PSLF. Private loans are not eligible for PSLF. They don't qualify for any of the federal repayment programs. And then time and default, defaulted loans, again, can be taken out of default to become eligible for PSLF by doing the loan consolidation or loan rehabilitation. Repayment plans that don't qualify are going to be those fixed alternative plans like the extended graduated and extended graduated repayment plan, the standard plan that's longer than 10 years, so maybe up to 30 years. And then most deferments and forbearances do not qualify for PSLF. So, and this includes in-school deferment. So if you're working at a maybe a nonprofit and you're in college and you've taken out some federal loans, you are in an in-school deferment, and that if you make payments on your loans, that those payments are not going to qualify for PSLF. For employers, if you're a government contractor, that is not going to qualify for PSLF. Any work or nonprofits that are 501(c)(4) and any political groups do not qualify, and then labor unions also do not qualify. So the PSLF buyback program, I've seen again a few questions in the chat, so let's dive into what it is. You can essentially buy back certain months in your payment history to make them qualifying payments for PSLF. And time spent in the Save Forbearance does count towards the buyback. So while you may not have been making payments or having your payments qualify for PSLF, you can, in the Save Forbearance, you can potentially apply for buyback and have those payments qualify. Specifically, you can buy back months that don't count as qualifying payments because you were maybe in an ineligible deferment or forbearance status. Again, time spent in an in-school deferment cannot be bought back. This can also be used for time in an ineligible repayment plan. So essentially, you're buying back past time. You do have to already reach the 120 credit mark before you can buy back your time. So this is part of how you can benefit. After you have reached the 120 months, you can then submit an application, and that would maybe result in PSLF forgiveness. Again, this would include buying back months that were spent maybe in a forbearance or a deferment. You must submit a buyback request and make an extra payment of at least as much as what they would have or what you would have owed under an income-driven repayment plan during the months you're trying to buy back. We've posted a link in the chat where you can head to find out more information about the buyback program on studentaid.gov. There are more visuals on studentaid.gov. It is a very complicated program. It's not easy to understand. And we, of course, do apologize for that and try to explain it the best that we can. But it is about buying back past time in repayment. Again, there's a huge backlog of more than 70,000 PSLF buyback applications right now, so just keep that in mind as you are considering a PSLF buyback application. It is definitely going to take a while to process that. Okay, we also have a finalized PSLF rule from the Department of Education. Um, and this is set to take place starting July 2026. Although that date is subject to change due to ongoing lawsuits right now that are challenging this final rule. Some employers at risk of being affected by these rules include, but are not limited to, gender affirming care providers like hospitals, nonprofits supporting immigrants, universities with DEI policies, and state and local governments in sanctuary cities and states. So essentially, these types of employers are at risk of not being eligible employers anymore. So the impact here is that if you're an administrative assistant for a hospital deemed ineligible for PSLF, moving forward, you would no longer be able to accrue PSLF credits while working for that employer. So this is going to have huge implications for folks. Um, Following the determination that the employer is deemed ineligible, payments would no longer count, but any past credits that you earned would remain intact. So it's not going to impact any credits that you have earned so far. And there are currently three ongoing lawsuits challenging this rule, and we will keep you all updated and posted on any updates that we receive. Our recommendation is that folks use the PSLF help tool right now and again sometime in late May or early June to get the most up-to-date PSLF credit count ahead of any potential rule implementation. So, just to be on the safe side, we are recommending that you use the tool so that you can solidify all of the payments possible before any employers are potentially impacted. Okay, additional forms of loan forgiveness, cancellation, and discharge. We'll go over these quickly in the last few minutes here. We do have some information here about total and permanent disability discharge. This provides full forgiveness on federal student loans if you're totally and permanently disabled. You do need to provide documentation from either Veterans Affairs, the Social Security Administration, or a medical professional. Um, there is actually no longer a 3-year income monitoring period for TPD, and borrowers qualify if they have a mental or health condition that is expected or has lasted um, 5 years and is preventing them from getting substantially gainful employment. So, this is a possibility for folks who are really struggling with their health. Um, there is a lengthy application here, so definitely read it over beforehand and make sure you can provide all of the documentation. Some other forms of loan forgiveness and discharge are borrower defense to repayment. This is available for folks who have maybe been defrauded by schools, specifically for-profit schools who have closed, and maybe your degree was taken away or your programming, your classes didn't qualify for things that they said they would. We also have teacher loan forgiveness, death discharge, closed school discharge, unpaid refund, false certification, and then Perkins loans forgiveness. And you can find all of these programs at studentaid.gov. They're very specific, so that's why we don't go into a ton of detail on them. So, what can you do right now? You should definitely make sure you're saving any communications or documentation that you've received from your servicer. This could mean printing, downloading, screenshotting, saving any information that details your PSLF credits, your IDR credits, if that's applicable to you. You should consider using the IRS integration for IDR applications. Again, those applications are seeming to be processed quicker. However, we do recognize that some folks don't want to opt into that, so that's again totally fine. And you can definitely explore loan forgiveness options like the ones we mentioned today. A note here is that Parent Plus loan borrowers who would like to enroll their loans in an income-driven repayment plan will need to consolidate their unconsolidated Parent Plus loans and have them issued before July 1st, 2026. So this means that if you consolidate your Parent Plus loans, they need to be completed. Your application needs to be processed completely before July 1st, 2026 if you want to enroll in an income-driven repayment plan. Our little unofficial consolidation deadline is April 1st, 2026, but we do encourage you to not wait until then if you are considering this option because of, again, the backlogs. So we're not sure if um, how many people are going to want to consolidate and how long those backlogs are going to take to process. So just keep that in mind. Even though we're saying April 1st, you might not want to wait until then. If you do have any issues or complaints, you can submit a complaint to your representative's office and use a casework tool. We can drop that in the chat. You can also contact your state AG offices, maybe get in touch with your local or state student loan ombudsman. Your servicer website can also be helpful. Some of them have chat and messaging functions, the phone, of course, or email. Although it is difficult to find time to wait on hold, um, it can be helpful and worth it to endure and get in touch with someone in person. And then also, we do have the Department of Education's Help Center here listed. However, we do recognize that there have been massive delays in responses from them. Okay, earlier I briefly mentioned not to Google student debt or studentaid.gov because you might end up on a harmful site. Unfortunately, there are debt relief scams out there. So these scams typically involve offering a loan consolidation or debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. All of this information today is completely free. Our programming is free. All of this information has been found from studentaid.gov, which is 100% free. Should never have to pay any upfront fees to anyone claiming to be the Department of Education or promising you loan forgiveness. So just be aware of those scams. Some bait and switch scams might include immediate loan forgiveness and or maybe something that says deadline approaching, or again, debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. This might be alarming, but just keep that in mind. Nothing on here um, is at or in exchange for a fee. It is all free of charge. A note here is that if you do refinance your student loans with a private lender, you will lose all access to federal student loan benefits and programs. I mentioned that earlier. So just keep that in mind when you are looking at your repayment options. We do have two upcoming workshops that you can sign up for. We are hosting a default and delinquency workshop on Wednesday, February 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then we are hosting a general student loan workshop on Thursday, February 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We can drop those links in the chat, and you are welcome to register, and we hope to see you there. We have a list of resources here. Again, you'll get a recording with this list of resources, but if you wanted to find out any more information about what we talked about today, whether it's income-driven repayment plans or public service loan forgiveness, maybe you want to find your state student loan ombudsman, you can head here to these links and find more information. And if you do want to continue getting updates that are similar to this workshop, you can visit us at studentdebtcrisis.org. You can sign up for our mailing list there. We have tons of information on that on our website. And then you can also follow us on social media at Debt Crisis Org on all social media platforms. And I will toss it back to Sabrina to close this out.
Great. Thank you so much, Sabrina Ashley. Thank you, Natalia, for running the slides. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I know this was a lot of information, but we will continue sharing it out. Tomorrow, you will receive a recording of this workshop as well as all of the links that we mentioned tonight. Thank you again for joining us. I hope everyone has a great rest of their night. Take care, and we'll see you next time.